Welcome to another episode of the Federal Newswire Lunch Hour Podcast with your host, Andrew Langer.
Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Lunch Hour with Federal Newswire. I'm your host, Andrew Langer, and as I've been saying, we appreciate your viewership and your listenership. If you're watching us on YouTube, you know you can always check out an episode of the Lunch Hour wherever fine podcasts are purveyed. If you're listening to us on a podcast platform, please come and check out our videos on YouTube as well. Leave a review, recommend us to your friends and your family members' friends, etc. Listen, I'm so glad to have our guest joining us today. His name is Reverend Corey Brooks. He's a pastor, he's an author, he's a community activist, the founder and senior pastor of New Beginnings Church of Chicago, and the founder and CEO of Project H.O.O.D, helping others overcome obstacles and develop a community development corporation that provides social services to people in the South Side, doing really interesting and innovative work. We can get back into your bio in a second, but let me ask you, Pastor Brooks, what made you decide to go and join the ministry? What made you go and follow that course?
You know, I tell people that when I was 14 years old, first of all, my mother made me always go to church from the time I was a little kid all the way up through my teenager years. When I was 14, I became a really rebellious teenager. I was in high school. I played sports. It was really, really good. And I really, kind of had a disdain for preachers for whatever reason. I just didn't like them.
Okay.
I tell people I thought all the black preachers that I was familiar with drove Cadillacs and loved it. That was my concept, my mindset. And but at 14, oddly so, I really felt the Lord calling me to be a preacher. And I could not understand that for the life of me, especially since I could not stand preachers. And so for 4 years, I really ran from that calling. I just did not want to do it. And at 19, I really finally submitted and surrendered to the Lord. And I'm glad I did. And ever since that time, I've been serving the Lord as faithfully as I possibly could and can. And I love ministry. I love doing the work of the Lord.
Before we get into some of the great details, I had a conversation years ago about work that a church that I was at was doing, especially in terms of sort of international development issues. And I was talking to somebody who was a retired Peace Corps volunteer who took great umbrage at the idea that churches were involved in this work. And I talked about how important, at least I thought it was, that there's a faith component involved in this kind of service. Talk about why faith can be important and is important, or if not essential, in solving a lot of these community problems that these communities are grappling with.
Absolutely. I think a lot of times in our community, we've depended on government to try to fix the problem. And I think a lot of us have realized that government does not have the answers, nor does it have the solutions to the ills that we're facing every single day. And so from my perspective, I believe and that the church is the hope of the world. I believe that the solution that we offer is the best solution. I think the principles that we try to get people to live by are the best principles. When we tell people, listen, it's good to have a child when you're married and have a spouse. That single parent households, which are 80% of the households in our neighborhood, bring with those a lot of issues and a lot of problems. And I think the principles that we believe in and that we offer help to teach people that they can have a more productive life, they can have a better life. And so I believe that the church, that Jesus is the answer. We have the solutions. We can do it way better than government. Government cannot, it may change some policies and legislate some laws, but they cannot have an impact on the heart and the mind of people. And so we that's what we offer.
That's exactly where I was going with this. So I want to come back to the single parent household issue in a couple of minutes, but that's exactly right? Government can provide goods, right? They can provide money, they can provide services. And I guess by some measure, one can say that maybe they can provide some measure of hope, but I really don't think that they really can. That's not the business that they're in. They're not in the business of providing hope. They're not in the business of sort of, certainly not in the business of satisfying souls. And if you have to go down, if we're going to solve these problems, you have to go down that road. I think you would agree.
without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
If you're going to solve the problems that we face in humanity, then you have to go down the road of getting to people's hearts and minds.
Right.
And I think a lot of times that equation is left out. And as a result, we continue to have systems in place that bring about the demise and the destruction of what we see every single day in America. And so to work on the hearts and the minds of people, I believe, is the best work and the really lasting, true work that works.
You know, it's akin to obviously the concept of teaching a man to fish, and I know we use that generally in terms of the provision of social services and the welfare state and jobs. But in terms of these other issues, in terms of dealing with these problems, talk about how that phrase is much deeper. I mean, when we're talking about criminal justice reform or dealing with gang violence or dealing with those other things, it's not just about teaching somebody a trade. It's about showing them that there is a different way to live your life. Tell us about that.
It's about every person being empowered, every individual being empowered, and teaching them to live a productive life.
Right.
And that's, for us, that's what it's really all about. You know, the reason why we teach work is because it brings dignity that people cannot get
Amen.
sometimes in any other way. And so absolutely, the principles that we believe in, we believe that they work, and we believe in giving hands up and not hands out. And we believe in helping people to rise to the occasion, and that if you give them the assistance that they need, most people are able to meet the challenges and grow from it.
Let's talk about, you mentioned something that is an important point in my mind and the policy work that I do and how I weigh a lot of these issues. You know, I weigh issues, does a government policy empower people to act on their own behalf, or does it disempower people to act on their own behalf? Talk about the trend towards disempowerment and how that can, and I'm going to say this, infect a community, destroy a community. Talk about that.
Yeah. Well, since the 60s, post-60 liberalism has been slowly, consistently, strategically, I believe, making people become more dependent upon government, disempowering them, so to speak.
Yes.
Putting in practices, putting in laws that cause people to have to depend on the government.
Right.
I think the best way to have a society to be strengthened and a community to be strengthened is for them to not have that dependency, not have that they need to have that work ethic, that hope, that empowerment, and not the disempowerment, because that only leads to destruction, and only leads to chaos, it only leads to even more inward frustration. But when people are empowered, every individual, they start to see for themselves that they can change the direction of their lives, and they don't have to wait on anybody to do it for them, that they can take the bull by the horns and take it for the ride and do the thing that they need to do to bless their families. And that's what it's really all about, empowering over disempowering.
I dare say that I think one of the problems in certain communities in America, that drives people into criminal activity, into the gray market or the black market side of things, is because they are getting punished for acting on their own behalf, and they want to. I think it's an innate human drive. Before we go down that road, though, let's take a step back for a minute, and I want to know, how did you wind up in Chicago? Where'd you grow up? How'd you get to Chicago?
Absolutely. Well, I grew up in a little town. They used to call it Middletown, USA, Muncie, Indiana.
Okay.
I went to school at Ball State University, graduated from there, and went to the University of Florida Law School. Stayed there for a year and realized I did not need to go. Shouldn't have never gone to law school in the first place.
Sure.
So I quickly got up out of there and went to seminary like I should have done in the first place, to Dallas Theological. And then while I was at Dallas Theological, I got called to pastor a little small church in Richmond, Indiana.
Wow.
And I ended up finishing my graduate studies at Grace Theological Seminary, where I drove 3 hours 3 times a week to finish my degree.
Wow.
And after 4 years in Richmond, Indiana, I knew I needed to be in a much larger place. So we started exploring places around America where we could start a church. And we said, why not Chicago? It has a need, and there's a lot of work that can be done. And so that's the city that we picked. And we've been here ever since.
It's funny you said that. I have family from Logansport, Indiana, so another
Oh, I'm
small
very
town.
familiar with it.
Yeah, so
Played basketball in Logansport.
there you go. Yeah, so we would do that. Me being a kid, I was not a city kid. I was a suburbs kid outside of New York City, but spent a lot of time in New York City. But I did
Oh,
love
wow.
I did love going to Logansport. It was a
Yeah,
step through time. So
exactly.
let's talk about the services here that are involved. In fact, let's talk about what it means to have a new beginning.
Yeah. Well, we believe that every person is created to accomplish the purpose that God has created them for, with a little help, with a little assistance. Sometimes they need a little washing and inspiring. And we believe that every person, regardless of their mess up and mishaps, is deserving of a new, fresh start, a new beginning. And in that new beginning, we envision making sure that people get the hope and the assistance that they need to get their lives on track.
Yeah.
So therefore, we started an organization out of New Beginnings Church called Project H.O.O.D. H.O.O.D stands for Helping Others Obtain Destiny. And with that, the starting of that non-for-profit, we started to build all the programs that we thought are necessary outside of our church that would help an individual to get back on track. And so that's why Project H.O.O.D was created out of New Beginnings Church.
Not that I want you to get political, and I really don't want you to get political, especially if you don't want to. But obviously, government is a jealous mistress. She guards her programs jealously. Talk about what that's like in Chicago and the pushback you've gotten from folks around here. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, let me just be really clear. As I was telling Pastor Brooks, Reverend Brooks, I'm sorry, sir, before he came on, I did radio in Baltimore for 10 years. And so what you're talking about and the problems you face and the challenges you face in dealing with city government, it's Chicago is one thing, and it's the same thing in Baltimore. It's the same thing in New York. It's the same thing in St. Louis. It's all around the country in big cities that are grappling with these issues. But let's talk specifically about the challenges you faced in dealing with the Chicago government and the political machine in Chicago.
I would love to talk about them. It's funny you asked me that question because today I'm going to be doing a video just on that subject.
Okay.
The challenges that I faced. And, you would think in this modern time that people would not have to go through these issues that we had to face making some of the decisions that we made and being conservative. You would think in this modern time that people would have the option or the opportunity to be free to choose whatever party, whatever policies that they desire. But that's not the case in liberal Chicago on the South Side, being a black preacher. It is believed that you are supposed to be a Democrat. It is believed that you are supposed to be liberal-minded. And anything contrary to that is opposition to the status quo. And so about 8 years ago, maybe even 10 years, close to 10 years, 10 years ago, I decided to come out of the closet as it relates to my political affiliations.
Okay.
I never talked politics. I never let people know my politics, but I decided I was going to support a Republican who was running for governor at that time, Bruce Rauner, and I was going to start espousing my conservative viewpoints, my conservative beliefs. And I've been a Republican and a conservative ever since I was 19 and a freshman in Ball State University when I decided to take my first political science course and found out the difference. But when I started to give those viewpoints out and I started to talk about it and I supported this Republican governor, we were challenged to the very core.
Wow.
We lost about 75% of our congregation.
Ooh.
At that time, we were at about 2,000 people, really strong. And the attacks that the unions and the Democrats and the politicians were giving me, it was an onslaught. And I didn't even know I was going to survive it because they were hitting me from everywhere with everything that they had. So much so that my family had to go into hiding for 2 weeks.
Oh my goodness.
The last 2 weeks of the campaign, there were death threats, and they talked about it on, the media and on TV about these death threats that we had gotten and how we had to hide. And it was, people picketing the church and people picketing my house. It was horrible. But I found out and discovered that whatever does not kill you,
of course,
definitely can make you stronger. And our church is all the more stronger as a result of it. Our non-for-profit came into existence as a result of it. And we've been able to do some amazing work. Even though we got challenged, we got hit, it hurt, it was difficult, it was trying, we have been able to overcome.
It's good to know. And I want to talk in a second about the specifics therein. Just from my own experience, right? Part of the reason why I had been skeptical of organized religion my entire life, and I make no bones about this, but my wife wanted to start going to church. I was dubious. I was certainly dubious because of some of the people who were in the church who I'd been at political loggerheads with. Yes. But I had a very good pastor. And not that churches should be centered around pastors particularly.
I understand.
But nevertheless, this was a pastor who really emphasized, let's find common ground with people. Let's all focus on the fact that you're both here first, and let's see if there are ways that you two can come together and solve problems, see where you're on the same page. And that was a very important lesson to me. I felt that I was being supported. But I also felt that, this was someone who had the best community interests at heart. And I appreciate that. Let's talk about it from the current perspective. I know I don't want to give away, I know you're doing a show later today on this, but we'll tease it a little bit here. But in terms of sort of the particular programmatic offerings, what you're doing, and I want to get into what you're doing on gang violence and other community service offerings, has your, how can I say this? As you're coming at things from a different political perspective, not being a Democrat in Chicago, has that hurt your ability to engage in community efforts? Has the city of Chicago tried to thwart you from engaging in those efforts because of your political beliefs?
That's a great question.
Thanks.
On one end of the spectrum, at a grassroots level, at a community level, we're highly respected.
Yeah.
We're highly appreciated. And the work that we have done and that we continue to do builds trust in the people who are around us. So the people who are around us could care less about my political opinion or my political thoughts, because they see the work that we do and they see how many people we help on a consistent basis and how many people we desire to help them transform their lives. And so it's appreciated. On the other end of the spectrum, as you said earlier, that government, sometimes can be a mean, cruel entity. And I think we've had great hits from politicians not wanting to come alongside and help us in programming, or even though we may be the best at what we do, it's hard sometimes to get the attention from the individuals who make decisions. For instance, our violence prevention team is probably one of the best in Chicago.
Right.
While the rest of Chicago, the violence has been going up. In our neighborhood, where it was written that we were the most violent neighborhood in 2014, it's been going down.
Yeah,
and that's due to the work of our violence prevention team. But it's hard to get the attention because they definitely don't want to look in our direction.
But let's talk about this, because there are two programs in particular that I want to talk about others, but in terms of this issue of crime, both the gang violence prevention work that you're doing and the post incarceration work you guys are doing, it seems to me that the city has one would think that the city has a vested interest in seeing those programs succeed. But again, it's not just Chicago, it's Baltimore, it's San Francisco, it's elsewhere, where the policies seem to want to perpetuate these problems, exacerbate these problems, and we can get into why that may be. I mean, where do you stand in all of this? Do you think that they don't want to solve the problem? Is it by intention, or what are your thoughts here?
I think that they only want to solve the problem if they come up with a solution.
Got it.
I think that I don't believe people want to see the violence. They want to see the crime that we're consistently seeing. But I also believe that they don't want someone outside of their circle coming up with a solution that works. And they rather continue the cycle of poverty and crime and victimization than to
Dependency.
see a solution
Yeah.
come from a place that they don't desire for it to come from. That's
You know,
the reason why I believe we're seeing these issues.
Had a conversation recently with a gentleman named Wayne Cruz, the Competitive Enterprise Institute, and he deals with federal regulations. But we spent a lot of time talking about throwing money at the problem, right? Government, if it allows government to spend more money and allows the size and scope and power of government to grow, that's really what they want. In the end,
Yes.
It seems to me that that's what's at work here. But let's talk specifics. What are you doing? How are you preventing gang violence? What are you doing for the formerly incarcerated folks who are in jail? I mean, I could speak in $50 words, but when a $5 word would do.
Absolutely.
So what are you doing in both of those spheres?
Okay, so twofold. One, let's talk about the gangs and
Please.
what we're doing with them. In our neighborhood, we've decided to hire individuals from most of the gangs that are functioning in our neighborhood. We decided to hire 2 or 3 full-time individuals from those areas, train them on trauma counseling, train them on conflict resolution, train them, help them to redevelop their mindset and soften their hearts. And we started to work with them to teach them the ways that violence has impacted our community, but also the ways that they need to now turn their lives toward trying to help fix the issue. So we have these individuals working from different gangs who used to be enemies of one another. They would call themselves ops or opposition, who are now working together. And as a result of those individuals working together, we are now able to get a hold of the violence. We're able to now get a hold of making sure that there's no retaliation. That's one of the reasons why we've been so effective in our numbers decreasing, because we've been able to really get to the very grassroots level of the violence and deal with it. From those 14 individuals, we have 40 part-time individuals out of those same neighborhoods that those individuals oversee, most of them coming out of gangs. And their job is to go back to those corners, tell them about the resources, promote. We try to act just like the gangs. Yeah. We go recruit.
Sure.
We recruit just like them. But the thing is, we have benefits. We have things that can assist them with their families, assist them with education, assist them with things that empower them.
Exactly.
Not disempower them.
Right.
And that makes the difference. And then, of course, we got our reentry program where people come out of jail. And when they come out of jail, they come to us and we set up a plan of attack to get them on the right track, to get you reunited back into the society and to get reconnected back to their families. We do those two things very well.
Let me ask you this. This is going to be out of left field, Pastor Brooks, but it's something I've been thinking about. You know, my good friend David Safavian over at the American Conservative Union, he's doing a lot of work on criminal justice reform, and the issue of it's not the stigma of jail or being incarcerated or being in the legal system, but talk about how the constant reminder of, your criminal activity, how does that impact the psyche of someone who's just gotten out of jail? It's like being slapped in the face every time you're dealing with it. How do you address that issue?
Very much so. It's a mindset change that has to happen. And the first mindset change that has to happen is to help that individual to understand that, yes, you may have did a crime and you may have done the time, but now that you're out, there are people who want to help you to transform your life. If you're willing to take responsibility and get your life back on track, then we have programs, systems that will help you to do that. I think when those programs and systems and people are not in place,
right,
then it causes individuals to constantly believe that everything that they've done, every mistake that they've made is going to continue to hold them back, because everything that they try to involve themselves in,
right,
whether it's getting an apartment or getting a job or being a volunteer, it is always constantly reminding them of the mistake they made. So here at Project H.O.O.D, we try to take that away and replace it with something that is empowering.
Do you guys work at all with the probation and parole system in order to sort of find a way to chart an even keel? Because, right, you talk to guys who've done this. And sorry, go ahead. Talk about that.
Yeah, a lot of times we'll have a probation officer who will call us and say, hey, I have a guy that's getting out or a lady that's getting out, and I think they would be perfect for your program. It seems as if they want to try to get their life on track. And so they'll bring them to us or they'll call us. That happens a lot. And we appreciate it because it gives us a segue into their lives to get them before they even get out of prison, and to let them know that when you get out of prison, report to us and we're going to assist you. So yeah, we're grateful for those individuals, those probation officers who send people to us on a consistent basis.
Let's talk about a little bit about substantive training. Bernie Kerik, former police commissioner in New York, who himself wound up going to jail, wrote a book about what happens when you're in prison and you get taught things, skills that you're never going to be able to use, right? And one of the examples he uses is, if you have a prisoner who is involved in some kind of real estate scam, teaching prisoners how to sell real estate. Well, while that's really interesting, no one is going to hire an ex-con to go and sell real estate. So how do you help give them practical skills that they can actually get hired to use?
Right. One of the things that we do, we have a trade school, and we try to teach the trades because we really do believe that there are so many opportunities. So we teach people carpentry, we teach them electric. We're building a brand new 89,000 square foot community center.
That's what I was going to ask
you.
You.
We can add HVAC and we can add automotive. Wow. But we also teach entrepreneurship too, because some of them may not be interested in trades, and some of them are good business-minded people because they just got led astray, but they're able to think business-like and they know business principles. So we help them to start businesses and become entrepreneurs. So we try to equip them with the gift, skills, talents, and abilities, and enhance what they already have so they can get back on track.
The world will always need HVAC repair people, and I'm not. Yes. This is not me casting aspersions on that. I am in awe of folks who have that skill set, right? And we seem to lose these practical skills. I'm sure you're going to go down the road of doing micro lending, maybe because that's going to be a vital aspect of this. I may come back to the community center, more specifically. But I want to talk about you going up on the roof. Tell that story about you. How long were you up there? Or why were you up there? Talk about that.
So the first time was 11 years ago. I went up on the roof to bring attention and awareness to the violence in the neighborhood. And it was a motel that was highly infested with prostitution and crime. And we wanted to take it over. And we wanted to get rid of that element. So I went up on the roof of that motel to bring attention and to raise money. And I thought it would take like a week to raise the money we needed, but it ended up taking 94 days from November the 20th till February 24th in
Chicago,
cold winter of Chicago.
Wow.
And we finally raised all the money, purchased the motel, tore it down, and we started endeavoring to build a center. So after 10 years, we realized, okay, we've been talking about this center, but we have not gotten any further. What can we do? So it was the 10-year anniversary. So I said, let's get some carrying containers together, build a roof, and put some tents back on top, and I'll go on the roof again and raise money to build this community center. And that's exactly what I did. And but this time it took 343 days for us to raise upward of $30 million where we are now for a center that's going to cost a shade over $35 million. We're trying to build it debt free. And so 343 days.
That's three. So that's what is that like $10,000 a day or whatever. Actually, math has never been my strong suit. So I
don't know, but
and the adage is
I can give you the end number.
never do math live while you're on the air. That's always a bad thing to do because invariably you get it wrong. That's terrific. And I want to go into this other project that you're talking about. And I listen. We can talk about gimmicks. I don't think this is a gimmick. I think, this is, to me, no different than the ecological protesters. I mean this in a good way, not a bad way. Going up into the redwood trees and staying there to bring awareness to the plight of the old growth redwoods. You go out there and you make a statement, you want to get noticed. You have to do these things to sort of cut above the static. Talk about the world's largest baby shower?
Yeah. So, I'm one of those persons that believes in whatever it takes to get the job done. So one of the things that we realize is that in our neighborhood, we have 80% of the households are single parent households. So we started trying to figure out what is the best way to minister to some of these single parents and to get their children involved from the cradle. How can we promote life and not death? So we said, let's have the world's largest baby shower and really start actively pursuing these mothers to give them the assistance that they need for their babies while they're prenatal care. And then after they're born, to make sure that we're there to assist them as well with parenting skills that may need it or whatever resources. But it gives us an opportunity to get involved in their life at the earliest point so that we can effectively make change. And so we're going to have the world's largest baby shower, and we're going to bless as many mothers who are having babies or have 1-year-olds and below as much as possible, and give them everything that they need and all the resources to get a good start.
It is important, especially because conservatives it has been a meme, an accusation that the media has propagated that conservatives only care about babies when they're in the womb, but they won't do anything to help them once they're out. And you are dispelling that myth in a very real way. It's vitally important. But you know something? Again, you may not want to talk about it. You can tell me you don't want to, but there is a particular issue here with regards to abortion and how it disproportionately impacts how it disproportionately impacts people of color in the United States. That's that. Talk about that and how abortion and abortion mills have impacted the Black community in Chicago and elsewhere.
Absolutely, I'd be glad to.
Yeah.
I think that's another reason why we said we're going to have this baby shower, because we want to promote life. There is so much death, not just with killings and crime, but with abortions. And it's an alarming rate of abortions that happen every single day in the Black community. And the sad part about it is that not only are these abortions happening every single day in the Black community, but there are not enough people who are saying, hey, we want to assist you with adoption, or we want to assist you with this baby. We want to make sure that you have life. And unfortunately, you have these clinics, we have these people who are promoting this death all around. Right. And a lot of times, unfortunately, these young women take that option. Well, we want to make sure that we give them another option, another opportunity, and so that they don't take the death option.
So I was at a meeting the other day talking about a variety of issues, and the issue of single-parent homes and non-broken homes came up, the importance of having both parents. And there was a gentleman was participating who got very angry, I guess, about the way where the conversation was going, and challenged the notion that it is important, or that there's any difference between a household that has two parents and is intact and a household where there is only a single parent. Talk about why this is important.
Two-parent household, we all know that's the standard.
Yeah.
That's what we believe. That's how it should be. But we also know in reality that oftentimes there are a lot of people who have children outside of wedlock. And as a result, when they have these children outside of wedlock, that they make those children become more acceptable to a lot of different things, percentage-wise. It's just percentage speaking, that normal children are not, it's not the same.
Sure.
Or I don't want to say normal children, that children born of two-parent households, the percentages are just not the same as far as education goes, who graduates high school, as far as crime goes, who goes off to prison, as far as jobs go, who gets the jobs and the increases that they have. All of those things are important. But we realize that although they're important, that sometimes these single parents, they have these children and they need help, they need assistance.
Right.
One of the things that you said that, I'm from a single parent household, but I still believe that two-parent household is the best way. But I also am grateful and thankful that there were some mentors, some preachers, some organizations who came alongside my mom and gave a positive impact on my life and an influence in my life to keep me going in the right direction. And I think that's what we're trying to teach here at our church. That's what we're trying to teach at our not-for-profit, that we still have to come alongside and assist all of these single parents to make sure that their children have a shot at the American dream.
If you don't have two positive role models in your life, you're going to go and find them. If you don't have a mother and father in your life, or a mother and a mother and father, or whatever, you're going to go out and find them. You're going to go out and find that person. And
yes.
And sometimes that could be a good thing. You find a positive mentor, or it can be a bad thing. Before I let you go, let me ask you about this, because this is something I've had conversations with my friends at the Independent Women's Forum. We are still peeling back the damage that the pandemic closures caused, how they impacted our kids. We spend a lot of time talking about kids and wealthy families and suburban families. We don't spend a lot of time talking about how the COVID closures impacted kids in inner cities. Talk about that.
There's one specific area, Andrew, that I would like to just talk about.
Please.
That we have seen a major problem. Here in Chicago, and I imagine a lot of urban areas across America have experienced the same thing, that when our children were out of school during the pandemic, mind you, a lot of them were already academically behind.
Yeah.
So now they're not in school, and even though they're telling them to be on these computers, they were not on the computer. A lot of these kids missed out on a year and a half, some even 2 years of education. And because of that, we've seen drastic decrease or increase in the amount of people or children who are not able to read at grade level. In our neighborhood alone, we have a 3% reading proficiency and a 6% math proficiency.
Wow.
That means only 3% of the children in our neighborhood in grades 1 through 6 are reading at grade level.
Wow.
I think that is an issue.
Where is Joe Clark, the famous Joe Clark from Newark? Where is he when you need him? You know, where have you gone?
Everybody, right now, every city needs a Joe Clark. Every school needs a Joe Clark.
Well, Pastor Brooks, how do folks find out more about the good work you are doing?
Absolutely. They can go to Project H.O.O.D, that's H-O-O-D, projecthood.org, and they can find out about all the work that we're doing in the city of Chicago, how they can help us to do the work, and how they can stay abreast on what we're doing as well. Projecthood.org.
Projecthood.org, that is the website. I will make sure I put up a link on my own pages for that. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for the good work that you're doing on these issues. It's so vitally important.
It's been a blessing.
Thank you. That, of course, was Reverend Corey Brooks from Chicago. I am Andrew Langer. This has been The Lunch Hour with Federal Newswire. As always, if you're listening to us, go and check out our videos on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, go and check us out wherever fine podcasts are purveyed. Please leave a review. Thank you all very much for joining us. See you next week. Have a good lunch.
This has been the Federal Newswire Lunch Hour Podcast, hosted by Andrew Langer. Check out the Federal Newswire's family of websites, as well as their social media stream.